Welcome to video number 6 in the Skymaster normal size F14 project. We got lofty goals in this video. The lofty goal is to get the nose bolted on to the fuselage, to the main part of the fuselage. We got lots of organizing still to do, so let's dive back in. All right guys, so last video we had just finished the wings, got our wing wiring completed, and that's run forward. So we got quite the mess now to deal with. And that mess is starting to look very messy. Now we do still have a few more things to go in this area. Not many, but we do have a few things to still go in there. That's okay. So the things we still have to do in the back here, we have to get our wire holders fixed. We have to get our startup plate or equipment fueling plate figured out here. So that's kind of the last two things to do in this area. So let's drop the F14 back down and get those things started. All right, so I took a piece of laminated plywood here and made our plate. And we've got a piece of aircraft ply. This is going to get mounted to the tank or glued to the tank. So that's going to go right there on the black line. And we're just doing some layout here. So this is exactly what we're putting on that plate, so nothing too crazy. And the actual plate itself is going to sit just like that. So it'll be screwed down into that piece of plywood. So that stuff's all ready to go. So now we're just going to take our Dremel bit and sand the tank a little bit. Now you want to make sure you're only sanding where you're going to be high soling or gluing the block on. If you were to put a little mark up here as an example, there's a good chance that the tank's going to leak on those marks. So we just want to do a thin band right below this black line right there. All right, so last night before we packed things in for the evening, we got our mounts done up for our main equipment plate. Now this is exactly the same thing we did previously. So I took some, I think that's 1/2-inch pieces of ply, aircraft ply or birch plywood, sanded a round section out of it, got those glued in place, so those are nice and solid now. So what happens is our main equipment plate, which we have to make, sits on top of here, and all of our wires and stuff run underneath, and then our wires run on each side and plug in to the central box. So that's done, which is good step. And then I just did our holes for our main plate. So all this stuff was allowed to dry last night. So this is good. This obviously just screws in place, so it's removable. But now we have to run our fuel fill line forward, our air line forward, and our GSU plugs forward. And additionally, got our air cylinders mounted in place. So those are just tacked in place with a little bit of silicone, and they're just put on each side here, right over top of the intake. So we've got one on each side, and those are going to be good. Before I put those in place, I installed the airline on them, and then those airlines can tee up as well too, just so when the compressor turns on, as an example, that feeds both of those air cylinders. So that's kind of the normal thing we do on basically any aircraft now that's getting a compressor installed, is use 2 cylinders. One's probably fine, but 2 is kind of just that good volume. And what happens too is when you get to the field at the beginning of the day, you make sure the plane's filled up with your separate compressor, and then the air compressor on board keeps track of everything, or keeps everything topped up throughout the day. All right, so we now have all of our items in the back end here solidly mounted, and everything's run. So we've got our lines from our turbines running forward. We are going through 2 of our full span keepers. We've got our startup tray installed. We've got those lines all run forward. The lines for the GSU are marked right and left. We've got our plugins for the wings. Those are solidly mounted on the fuselage. So that's all done, which is great. There's nothing left in this back end to run forward. Now our turbine cables are a little bit short. So we've got these guys right here. Can see they're different lengths because of the positioning of the leads. So this one comes from that turbine. It's shifted a little bit sideways. Anyways, pretty straightforward stuff. So the last thing to do before we think about bolting on the nose section is to extend these turbine cables. Now this is the stock turbine cable, and it's really not an issue to extend the turbine cable. With Swiwen, for example, you can go up to about 3 feet is pretty much a non-issue. I have gone longer, but 3 feet is kind of a good number. Xicoy is kind of the same thing. So this is a standard cable for the turbines, and we are going to take one of these guys, cut it in half, and extend it. Now, because we got a little bit of a difference there, we're going to make one a little bit longer than the other, but we're just going to put our MR30 end, so this is the stock end, we're going to put the female end on the other side and make two turbine cables, get these installed, get some shrink tube installed over them, and essentially what that means is all of our items that come through this area are now long enough to get to the various locations in the nose. Now previously when I put this plane together, I've actually been watching a lot of my previous videos and they've been super helpful, which is awesome, but there was a lot of confusion when I was doing the last one on how to put things together and all that, so there's a lot more clear path now, which has been awesome. But what that means is I don't think I'm going to bolt the nose on right away. I'm going to do some other things like getting the cockpit finished, get like the mounts for the cockpit and everything, rather than trying to do that with the nose installed. So there's some other stuff we're going to do in the nose section, but the finale, I think, of this video will be bolting that nose on the fuselage. So let's get these guys made up as our next step. All right, so prepping the front gear to go back in the aircraft, we have installed our servo, and the actual arm that operates everything needs a flat spot as well. So these guys are Loctited in place, but they do not come with flat spots. So this is something that if you don't do, it'll end up turning on you. So there is the mark where our previous bolt was screwed down. So it was sitting just like that. So we'll just flat spot that with the Dremel. This is a real pain in the butt to get off, and then once that's flat spotted, we'll reinstall our top plate. Along with that, all of our other fasteners need to have Loctite installed, so every metal fastener on the aircraft front nose gear. All right, so front gear has been all Loctited everywhere. We've got our servo mounted. Next thing to do is put our servo arm on and get the linkage set up. Now, while we were doing that, we took off the little light system here. Now, the light system that was sent with the Unilight kit was too big. It was a larger light, and this is the one we used on the previous kit. So to give you a bit of a synopsis here of what we did, this used to be part of this. We cut that off, flush with the tip of my finger right there. So snip that off, sanded this guy down, and then mounted a small spotlight from Unilight, drilling a hole right there, and that hole lines up with the holes that actually hold this thing in place. So the light's all glued in place, that's ready to go. We've got it CA'd and just used some shoe goop to hold that in place. And then for our colored lights here, just take some airline, 1.5 pieces. So one piece you split it in half, another one you cut it into 2 pieces. Put that in there, put a drop of shoe goop over top of each of those, and it makes a nice little fake lens light setup. So we're letting that cure and dry before we get this reinstalled, and it of course goes right like that. So while we're waiting, we're going to get our servo arm set up. This is pretty straightforward. We're just using an arm, clevis setup, so very straightforward stuff. All right, preparation for nose stuff. So we've got the light lead run, we've got our servo installed, we've got the coily wrap done, we've reinstalled the nose strut door thing here, the long slim one. That just moves with the actual gear movement, so that stuff is good to go. We probably should have done some of the stuff beforehand, but that's okay. So we've also done our canopy lock air cylinders. So we've filled this up to 100 psi and pinched them off. Gear door closed lines, again, those are pinched off, have 100 psi in them, so we're just letting those sit to make sure that they hold air well. And we've also prepared the front tank here as well. So these leads will go to our UATs, which will be right here. So we'll cut those down shorter as needed. And then the leads coming from the back, that feed the back tanks, those will hook up to the vent line on the main tank. So while we're waiting for this stuff, I want to get the tank installed in the fuselage. This is, yes, it's a mess, but we're basically splitting stuff one side or the other. Going to slip that tank in now that we've got everything pretty much run, and we'll get that tank put in next. All right, gear is back installed in the aircraft. We've been kind of working on the cockpit, getting that stuff fit, but in order to fit the cockpit, you need to have the gear in the aircraft because you need to make sure that there's enough room for the servo to move in and out and stuff. So kind of doing steps here. And our rear equipment plate, got that sprayed gray, and this is where pretty much most of the equipment's going to be mounted to. So now with that front gear installed, everything's functional with it. We got everything run and whatnot, so that is good. We will start to mock up the cockpit. So probably the biggest, most important thing with the cockpit is the front supports. This is the front cockpit, so this is the kind of dash panel. So we'll have a front support for this, and we'll also have a front support for this area right here. So those are important because they slip in and then attach at the back here, attach at the back here. So there's kind of two screws, but those need to be fit kind of before we do anything else. There's really not great access to that because we've got this former in the front here that holds the battery support, but at least we still have some access on both sides. All right, so the way we're installing this cockpit is, this is the front section through the front of the aircraft. So we've got our dash panel with the skinny cross piece. Now that's just tacked in place with some CA. And then our wider piece, which is holding the front cockpit in place. So we will glue those in place, but right now they're just spot glued with some CA. So now we're going to flip this guy back over. And this also allowed us to see any interference here. So we've got a little bit of interference with the servo. So we do have to chop that off on the cockpit a little bit. So you can see the cockpit is centered as far as the cutout goes, but the servo and everything is offset a little bit. So we've got to chop that corner out a little bit. So we'll take a Sharpie and just mark that so we know which side to get rid of. So now we'll flip this back over and see how it pans out with the cockpit and taking the cockpit out. So when we take the cockpit out, the gear does need to be down in order to have enough space to be able to get that out. We did clamp it on this side to hold everything in place. So what I want to check here is if we can actually get this whole system out now that we've got those cross members in place. Well, I lied. In the previous video, I'm sad to say that I said the wings were the most challenging part of this aircraft, and I lied. This cockpit, I forgot at how much of a pain in the buttski it is. I've been fighting with this stupid cockpit basically all day, or a large majority of the day. Let's not over-exaggerate here. I think we've got it licked. I think there's a plan in place, but I tell you, what a nightmare. The F14 cockpit, the small F14 cockpit it's terrible. It really is. It's the worst experience ever. Ward's over there laughing. Working on a few different things here. So we've got, what have we done since the last clip? I don't think much. But so I got the equipment laid out on the board here. So this is the rear board, as we've talked about. I think that's how we're going to do it. Initially, I had all the air valves run like this. The problem is then you have a sharp 90 when the air comes out. If we run them at an angle like this, then the air comes out nicely at a more swooping angle. So I think that's how it's going to work. We'll probably have a cutout in the center with a through fitting, and the air lines are going to come up maybe and go to their respective locations. So we'll see how that works. So I think that's how the air is going to get laid out. We are putting the central box back on here, and I have made some cross members, and those cross members are going to get high soled or aero epoxied in that spot right there where the black line is, that spot right there. And the central box sits like that. So the central box does need those cross pieces to screw into because it's not wide enough, and we don't want to run anything and add any height here because the cockpit sits so close to that central box already. So that's the good plan. So we're going to get some aero epoxy mixed up to glue these guys in, the cross braces. We also have our cross braces for the cockpit, the front cockpit and the dash. So we'll get those. They're just tacked in place right now with CA. So we're going to get those things glued, and I don't really know what we're doing next. Oh yeah, compressor. So previously, I think I ran the compressor way down low here, and it was an absolute nightmare to service or do anything with. So this time, I'm going to run the compressor flipped around the other direction so the output is facing backwards or towards the rear of the aircraft. But if we ever need to change this compressor, the mount is going to get glued in place, and we've got screws here and screws there. So way easier to get at and much more serviceable. So that's a good change, I think, that we'll do. And I think things are feeling pretty good. Things are coming together nicely. Since we've got the electrical disruption with the compressor on this side of the aircraft, highly likely that we'll put our lighting controller on this side as well too. I think we're going to have our control hubs or ECUs for the turbines velcroed to the side, and kind of sure that we're going to put our fuel pumps kind of in this area as well too. I think that is where we put them previously with the Jetsmonth's fuel pumps that we installed previously. So once we're done here, this whole area ends up being absolutely packed. There's really no good way to make it super clean, but it will make it organized and serviceable. All right, so lots glued and screwed yesterday. So we've got our front plates, which those were high solid in place. We've got our compressor installed there. So that stuff is all installed and done. It's been sitting overnight. We also did our layout on our board here. So we've got all of our air valves installed. We still have to install these guys here. I'm just figuring out where we're going to put our vent fitting and stuff like that. So I think we're going to put our vent fitting here in the fuselage. So it's going to be right in this spot right there because that stays away from the ordnance and it's nice and hidden. So that's probably where our vent's going to go, which is going to be right in the front part of this tray. And then we'll probably do a through fitting somewhere here. So it makes sense to have these guys kind of mounted back there or there or wherever they're going to fit. So that is the tray. Cockpits have been sitting overnight, so this changes a little bit from the standard setup. So the standard setup has two screws, one through each side of the seat, and we're changing that to a center screw. Getting those seats in and out for installation is one of those steps that makes things a heck of a lot easier. So it's nice just to have one screw in the center. Well, I think that's how the previous F14 was done. So this is the, what is that? The rear seat. And this is the front seat. So the front one's not so critical because this will go in. It's a real bear. This will go in with the seat installed, but it is a nightmare. But if you ever need to take this out, then it's nice to be able to pop that seat out. But if you're ever working on this aircraft, after the cockpit's installed, pull the canopy off, take this rear cockpit out, and the front cockpit kind of just tucks forward and gives you access to this entire area. At least that's what we found works quite well. So cockpit tubs are sort of ready to go in. And we also got our cross braces glued in place as well too. So that's a lot of good things accomplished. So what that means now is we can get our central box installed on there, which is great. So I think we are very close now to bolting the nose on the aircraft. Last thing to do is sand all of our little nubs down from the screws coming through and drill our holes through the plate into our wood blocks down there. So our tray is all good to go. We've got all of our wires twisted here as well. Took one of our two-way valves off here and put a brake valve there. So this is going to be the canopy lock and unlock valve. So this is going to go towards the front of the aircraft, and just made this a little bit cleaner. Sequencer fail-safe is screwed down, and we're just getting our through fittings ready here to be installed. So a lot of times when you see this 3D printed stuff on our projects, all of this stuff is available on our website. So if you go to thelightersideofrc.com, you'll see tank or UAT holders, through fittings, all these little bits and bytes that we use in our projects. They are all available on the website. So we'll cut these guys out and get those installed. The back one here is basically going to be for the wires, or any of the wires coming from the Xicoy sequencer. And then this is the square through fitting here is going to be where all the airlines come up. So those airlines coming from the back, they're going to go underneath the board. They're going to get teed up and organized and everything, and then they'll come up through this fitting and go to the appropriate locations. Our gear valves, as an example, might end up being these 3 valves right here, and they will plug into the Xicoy sequencer, or we may do this type of setup right there to keep it a little bit cleaner. But anyways, that is the layout of the tray. All right, so we'll do a quick rundown here of how we set up the Xicoy fail-safe sequencer. I've done this before, but this past week I've had some questions on how to do this. So here's another video on how to do it. So we've got our sequencer plugged in to the gear channel on the radio. We've got the gear channel in this situation, it's plus 25 minus 125, doesn't matter, plus 100 minus 100 is fine. We've got 3 of the ports being used. So we've got port 1, which is our gear port, port 2, which is our front doors or main doors, port 3, which is our rear door. And the important thing here is if you ever use more than 1 gear valve, you need to do a Y cable to number 1. Don't split them. Don't do 1 gear in 1 gear in 2, it doesn't work. So first thing I've done in here is I've gone in to the data hub and we did the radio setup. So that's already done and that's fine. So next thing to do is we need to define our sequencer out position. So before I show you how to do this, we want to draw it in a chart. Okay, so that is how we define everything. So we'll go gear down and we have steps for each one. So we've got step 1, step 2, step 3, and then gear up. So it's important as you go through this that you define each of these steps. So if we take our hub here, our gear down position, output 1, open. Don't think about this as doors open, doors closed, gear open, gear closed. Just think about it as position 1 or position 0. That's basically it. So if we go like that to the closed position, this valve will change. Okay, so it doesn't really matter what it is. On some valves, like a Jetronic valve, the valve defaults or likes to start up in 1 position. In this case, doesn't matter. But we need to define each of those steps on the chart. So what does that look like? Well, in the gear down position, we have output 1, we'll just say open. Output 2, we'll say open. Output 3, we'll say open. Okay, so when we work from gear down towards gear up, how do we want this to work? So we want the gear to come up first. So when it goes from gear down to step number 1, we want the gear to come up first. So we're going to say closed. The doors need to stay open, or we need to have that condition stay the same. We will do number 2, we'll do gear stays closed, and our port number 2, which is our front doors, those need to, I think, close first. No, I was just double checked, and our back door, which is number 3, those need to close first. So we'll go closed, and the front doors stay open. Step number 3, gear stays closed. These doors now close. These doors remain closed, and we've got our gear up condition, which is C, C, C. Now we can give these a little bit longer in this scenario if we want. So when we go from gear door, gear down to 1, we can go gear closed, open, open, closed, open, open. Step number 3 is going to be closed. This remains open, and this is C for close. And then our gear up condition is close, close, close. So that's the first step to making this successful. We're not using port 4, so we'll just leave that. Now when we go from gear up to gear down, everything happens in reverse. So the first thing that's going to happen here, all of our gear is up, doors are in the C position. So when we go from gear up to step 3, gear stays up, the back doors stay closed, the front doors, port number 2, opens. And I just double checked on the plane, that is in fact correct. So front doors open, which also means the nose doors. Next step, the gear remains up, the back doors open. Next step, the gear remains up, back doors and front doors are both open again. So these steps are essentially the same. 1 and 2 is the same step. And gear down condition, the gear now comes down, doors stay open. So this has enough steps in here that it would allow you to do, if you had doors that needed to open, gear comes down and close afterwards. That's what this is, but you have to define each of these steps, otherwise your controller does not work. So now what you do is you go into the controller and you just set all this stuff up. So we'll just copy this chart the way it is and see if we need to make any changes. So gear down position, output 1 is open. Gear down position, output 2 is open. 3, open. And then we just cycle through. We're not worried about 4. 5 is our telemetry. Then we go to step number 1. So we're defining all of these things. Okay, so step 1, output 1. This needs to go closed. Open, open. Okay, now we're going to step number 2. So close, open, open. Step number 3, close, open, close. So close, open, close. Gear up. We are closed on everything. So we're close, close, close. So now our gear controller mirrors this chart, which means everything's going to be sequenced properly. So there's other things you can set in here. So for example, we've done our sequencer out position, which is the chart. Okay, we've done our radio setup. Servo position, if you're using servos for doors, this defines its limits. Sequencer delay, so this is where you've got some delay in between each of the things. So step 1 time is 2 seconds. Step 2 time, so going from 1 to 2 is 4 seconds. I don't worry about this too much right now, but I will drop this one down to 2 seconds just to make it all even. Now this 2 seconds is going to seem like an eternity at the beginning. So step 3, 2 seconds, and there we go. So now we defined our spaces or our gaps in between each of those steps. And the other thing we're going to do here, so we got sequencer delay, LED setup, not worried about that right now. Pressure setup, so we're going to use, this is just for our telemetry, so we're using PSI. Fail-safe pressure, I don't set this up yet until later in the aircraft setup. I don't want this fail-safe to get in the way of setting this gear controller up. So now we've done our radio setup, servo out position, sequencer delay, LED setup, pressure setup, telemetry setup. So we're using Jetty. So right now output 5 is operating as an output. And if we change this, so Jetty is now output 5. So now when we run a line from our port number 5, which is telemetry, to our Jetty equipment, we will get our telemetry feedback on this setup. And it also had a warning there. We'll leave the warning where it's at. I'll just go back to show you. Okay, so telemetry setup, we've got jetty, and we've got alarm pressure of 43 PSI. So we'll bring this up a little bit. We're probably gonna set our fail-safe when this is done to 65 PSI, but it's more about what works with the landing gear. And then we'll set an alarm up to 55 PSI. So if the pressure in the system ever gets to 55, it's gonna give us an alarm. So now we will go through everything. I think that is all the screens. Telemetry, power up setup, power up setup. This is another one. So immediate action. I like this. So if we've got our gear in the down position, it does that automatically. So that's where we leave it. And that's all the settings for the controller. Let's just double check and make sure. So now when we are in the gear down position, you'll see we're open, open, open on those ports, open, open, open. So it tells you here what we're doing. Now, if we go to gear up, and you watch this chart or this controller carefully, you'll see it go through all the steps. And you might hear the valves click. So gear up. So step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, which is gear up. There we go. So that's all the steps. And you can hear the valves, what the timing is going to be. So let's go gear down. So right now the gear's up, so we're going to have our doors open first. Gear comes down. Step 1. There we go. So timing wise, don't know if that's enough. We may have to increase timing, but we have to do that when it's in the plane and see if that's going to be enough. So that is the setup of the Xicoy fail-safe sequencer. All right, so using our Dymo Rhino 4200 printer here to print our shrink tubing for all of our surfaces. So what I was doing is I was getting our leads done up here for our Xicoy fail-safe sequencer. And we need to put our labels on here. So this is going to plug into the sequencer side. This is going to plug into the jetty side. So I want to be labeling these. So all I do for that is I go through, and let me just chop this off, go through and reference the radio and all of our functions laid out in the radio. And some of this stuff makes sense. You kind of have to know how things are getting wired to not do too many of them. But anyways, that's our setup here for all of our surfaces. So we'll cut those off, get them installed, and get these guys done up. So one of the things I think I'm going to do a little bit different, and this is part of the reason why I got those labels done up now. Previously, or the normal process is I would bolt the nose on, we'd have all these wires coming through, and I would be fighting inside the fuselage, doing up all these wire connections. So I think what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna figure out our length that these guys need to be. So this is all the stuff that's running to the central box as an example. And we'll figure out our length required for this guy to come beside the central box, up and over. And we're gonna do all of these connectors that we can outside of the fuselage or before we connect the front part of the fuselage. And that's gonna save so much work and fighting inside that fuselage. So always improving. All right, so those leads on our board are done up. I've also marked out a little cutout for where we will cut the board out to do our vent fitting outside the fuselage. Now, thinking about a couple other things here while we work through this. So first thing is all of our jetty devices, all of our devices, we want to have an extension run to the front of the aircraft. So on some aircraft, like a sports jet, really doesn't matter. But on scale aircraft, when you're burying these devices, you can imagine when you are flying this F14 as an example, and you want to make some changes to the gear controller. If you don't run an extension from that gear controller all the way to the front or somewhere accessible, you're going to have to pull out cockpits, canopies, all that stuff, and it just becomes an absolute nightmare. So that's why we run those extensions to different locations, just like our GSU extensions right here. So these extensions, basically, if we turn them, this is left turbine, this is right turbine. So now we just plug our GSUs in here and we have full control over all of the stuff inside the airplane, rather than having our GSUs mounted on the side of the fuselage here, trying to, it just doesn't make any sense. So it's the same thing when it comes to the gear controller as well too. So we've got this terminal plug right here. Well, rather than leaving that blank, let's run that terminal plug forward inside the fuselage to the front, where we will have a little bundle of cables. Now those bundle of cables are going to be our Xicoy sequencer, Cortex, receiver 1, receiver 2, R900 receiver, on-off switch, the jetty switch. So all of those devices are going to have an extension that comes to the front and just allows you full accessibility to all those items. All right, front tray has been fit. So point of that was drilling our holes in our mounting pieces, getting that guy installed. So now we can pull that tray back out and that is ready to go in. We've got our leads here. The long one is our extension, as we talked about in the previous clip. That's going to go all the way to the front of the aircraft, and these other two get plugged into the central box. So with that being said, guys, I think it is time to do some wiring. So we are going to go through all of these wires, figure out how long we need them to be, and get them set up for installation before we bolt this nose on. So it's going to be a big time saver later on and a headache saver as well too. So not much to show here other than we figure out our length and we'll just match them all up to that length, put our label on, get our power box servo connector installed, and that's basically it. And that really shows the importance of labeling all these guys, right? So leading edge number 2 as an example. So we're going to go through, get all those done. We'll come back when we're ready to bolt that nose on. All right, so we've got all of our servo ends done on the rear part of the fuselage, so that's all finished. Working on the lighting system now. So a few things going on here. We've got our shoulder lights, we've got our rear lights, and then we've got our wing lights, which are these guys right here. So a little bit going on here. Now we're going to be pairing up the shoulder lights. We're going to be pairing up the wing lights. Each of the strobes in the rear on the rudder will be individual. And then we've got this lead here, which is the power for our afterburner lights. I did mount the Unilight lighting controller right there. And then a little bit about how we're going to lay things out here. So this is taken from the back of the Unilight controller. So one, and I've got solid and whatever written on here because this is the normal operating procedure for this without reprogramming it. So we're going to have wingtips left and right in port 1, that's solid. Shoulder lights left and right paired up and in port 2. Then we've got one of our rear lights in 3, another one of our rear lights in 5, bottom strobe light is in 6. Now landing and chin pod lights, those are in 7 and 8. So those will be when we go to gear down, there'll be a mix that overrides or adds some travel to the light channel to make these guys active. And then when we do our gear up, that number will reduce a little bit. So the lights will be activated, the landing lights will be activated when that gear comes down. Now working on the power setup for our lights. So that is all going to be powered through the S-BEC on the Central Box 400. Previously in the series, we took a look at that and reducing the voltage to make the wing swings work properly. So we're going to be using one of these guys, probably port number 2, doesn't matter. But port number 2 is going to have this multi-connector that I did up attached to the MPX plug right there. Now this multi-connector will power our primary lighting controller, so there's 2 inputs for that. And then we've got our afterburner lights, which is this lead right here that plugs into that lead that we just looked at right there. So one side of the central box is going to power our lighting system. Now the other side is going to go through a Unilight BEC. So this BEC is going to drop the voltage to about 6 volts for the swing wing mechanism. So what we've done with the swing wing mechanisms here is we've taken the white wire off of both of them, and that is going to plug in to the central box in the actuation port. And then both of these guys right here, the power leads, they will have a connector installed. That connector will plug into that BEC from Unilite, supplying 6 volts to the swing wing mechanism. So that's how that stuff is organized, and we are almost ready to bolt this fuselage together. Still a little bit more wiring to do with the lights. Now the lights, the controller is sitting right in this area when we put that fuselage together, so these guys are all going to be pretty short, just like that. So that's why I wanted to get that lighting controller mounted, so we knew how long to make these guys. All right, I know, I keep saying next shot will be bolting the nose on. Well, we're almost there. We're close. We've gotten our bolts ready. We've got all of our wiring done, all the light wiring, everything's done there. But then I realized that we need to do a little bit more to the front end. So chin pod, it's gonna be a heck of a lot easier if we get this guy installed before the nose goes on. So created our lens, ran the light here, drilled out the light, so that LED light's going to go right inside the lens, which mounts right there. Chin pod gets glued to this location right there. So that's going to happen, and then we're ready to install this guy. We do have the belly light to go on right here, and I'm going to probably put that on once it's installed, or once the nose is installed on the plane. I may do it beforehand, but that's not really a big deal. So almost ready to bolt the nose on. All right, guys, well, it's time to stuff this mess inside that and make a crazy mess. So it's going to be an interesting one. I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup here first. I want to get rid of those pieces from doing all the wiring, but we're ready to bolt the nose on. So it should be pretty straightforward. We've got 6 bolts, 4 big ones, 2 small ones that go in the shoulder. We're going to be Loctiting everything, so let's get this guy bolted on. All right, guys, so with this 14, it's very difficult to actually make all of this easy. So this is pretty much the easiest way that I figured out to do this. Last time, I don't remember getting all these wire leads done. This is going to be so much easier now, but I think we're going to be good. So I'm just going to grab a Velcro strap and put that together with all this stuff. That'll make that a lot easier. So that's not that bad. It's not terrible. There's a lot of stuff though. All right, so we'll just use a piece of orange tape. The orange tape is nice because it is very nice paint prep tape, so it's actually very sticky. That'll make things a little bit easier. So we want to make sure we get lots of Loctite on our bolts, our fasteners, of course. So we will bring the nose section here. Now I did end up putting the light on the underside on, so it's right there. Nothing super fancy, but it is done. We've got our nice bench here as well, which is going to make things a little bit easier. This is where you kind of having 2 people makes life a heck of a lot easier, but it's not going to be too bad. We'll just get our first 2 bolts installed in the top here. That'll allow us to put a sufficient amount of Loctite on them. Like that. We've got our Allen key ready. It's nice to have a ball end for this type of thing. And everything should just pop in. Now, just because we organize the mess doesn't mean the mess is gone, that's for sure. Okay, so if I can get these top ones started, then that'll hold everything in place. Perfect, I can feel that one going in. That's great. I'll get the other one in started. And hopefully this makes sense why you want to get as much of this pre-done as possible. Even the tank safety wiring, like if we had to do the safety wiring now on those tank fittings, it would be absolutely brutal. So that's why you want to do it in advance. Just going to give a double check there and make sure everything's out of the way, which it is. Okay, so I'm not going to do those ones up all the way. I'm going to put the bottom ones in. Okay, and those are going in nicely as well. That's wonderful. Good stuff. We'll get our other bottom one done. And then the side ones can sometimes be a real pain in the butt. But I think from memory, these ones end up lining up quite nicely. So we'll get the fuselage ones cinched down, not tight. We'll just get them, I call it finger tight. And the reason for that is we just want to bring the front fuselage into alignment with the back to make sure that everything lines up. There we go. So now those are finger tight. Now we'll take these ones, the side ones, we'll just check and see if they actually go in. Very nice, everything is aligned nicely. So we need our L bend now. We'll do up the other one with Loctite, and then we'll pull that first one out. Oh baby, I think that one goes together nicely too. Wow, that is wonderful. Not often does that happen. Okay, so we'll tighten this side one up first. Take the other side out to get Loctite installed on it. Awesome, went in nicely. So that's basically the fuselage, guys. I'll show you in the next clip here what it looks like inside this thing now. And you can see the mess and what I'm talking about. All right, and fuselage is officially bolted together. Now, going back and watching these videos previously, it's pretty funny because I remember when we bolted this together, I was like, whoa, this thing is huge. And now it's not so huge, but it's still a big airplane. It's a good size airplane. It does grow another couple feet when you get the nose bolted on. But I'll show you guys what this looks like now inside here. So that alone is why you really want to have things as organized as possible. So it's still not going to be easy to get in here. We've got to do up a bunch of airlines and stuff in this area, but at least it's as organized as it can be. So, but that is wicked. Wicked, wicked, wicked. Super progress. That is wonderful. Very happy. Well, guys, that is going to wrap up video 6 in the assembly series of the Skymaster F14 normal size aircraft. No promises, but I'm thinking maybe in the next video we finish and do our test runs, but we'll see what happens. I feel like we got a lot accomplished already with getting all the wiring ends installed, so we just need to run everything and plug it in. So that's a huge bonus. Obviously, there's lots of organizing still to do and cockpit work, final detail work everywhere. So still lots to do on this 14. But I'm thinking maybe we finish this up in video number 7, lucky number 7. So we'll see. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. Thank you for watching the videos. We have so many cool builds and assemblies coming up this winter, and looking forward to it. So thanks guys for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.